Lakuta Sichis Chelek Chav Zayin Behar Aleph Leilu Nishmas Yosef Ben Yamin Ben Rabbi Menashe Kaltman. We're going to learn a Sicha that explores the concept of kinyanim, of transactions, as they apply in Avodas Hashem, in our service of Hashem. Ba kinyanim, in this Parshas Behar, it discusses, there's a pasuk, if you will sell something or buy something, and from this originates the laws of mechira, the laws of various different transactions in the Torah. So based on that, we're going to learn something on that topic. Kinyanim is a klal in ein adam makar davar shalom b'olam. The halacha that we're going to focus on today is the fact that one cannot give away, one cannot make a kinyan, transact something that does not yet exist. Therefore, as a moicher peres dekalachaveri, aided the peres of an ungiven vaccine, if someone sells the fruit of this palm tree to another person before the fruit actually began to grow, he could change his mind even after the fruits already grew. Because when they made the kinyan, when they did the transaction, the fruits did not exist in this world. So only if a person made a kinyan on the guf, on the actual tree for the fruit, for example, in the case of a tree, that he sold him or gave him the tree itself for the fruits that will come from it, is their din as ein ze makna davar shleib leilom. The din is this is not considered making a transaction over something that doesn't exist, because the actual tree exists, and he is making the transaction over the actual tree, and therefore it does work. So you cannot make a transaction over fruits that haven't yet grown, but you could make a transaction for a tree and give the fruits of that tree to the person as part of his ownership of that tree, even if it's a partial ownership. For example, he can't chop the tree down or anything like that. He's only giving him the tree for the sake of its fruits, but that does work because the guf of the tree, the actual tree, exists. Zog the Rambam, and then there's a third din that we're going to focus on today. The Rambam says, as the din ha'ekdish, the din ha'ani, the din ha'nadarim, einei kedin ha'edit b'kniyasei, if you're talking about hekdish, something that he's donating to the Beis HaMikdash, or something that he's pledging to the aniyim, to the poor, or making a neder on something, that's not the same din as a mundane transaction. So if a person says everything that my behema will give birth will be hektish, or at nenul tzedakah, everything that is born in this coming year will go to tzedakah, even though it can't become hektish. It can the ownership wasn't transferred because it doesn't exist yet, and as we said, you can't make a transaction for something that doesn't exist. But nevertheless, he has an obligation to fulfill his word, because it says that a person should do everything, should fulfill that which comes out of that which he utters with his mouth. Even though this object that doesn't yet exist in the world, it cannot be, the holiness doesn't apply to it yet. So the chayfetz, the object itself, doesn't change because it didn't exist at the time of the transaction. But nevertheless, there is an obligation on the gavra, on the person who spoke the words, the kayim dvari, to fulfill his words, but the neder, because of the din of neder. The Rambam is enoch mamshich. The Rambam continues, since this is the case, im tziva adam kshu shchiv mira, v'omar kol ma sheyetzi ilan zel la'aniyim, zochu ba'ananiyim. There's a concept called matna shchiv mira. That's something that a person that is on his deathbed and is dying, it gives away, even though it doesn't have all the regular details, the edim or other things that you might need to make a kinyan. But because he's a shchiv mira, because he's dying, so his matana works, and therefore, says the Rambam, that if a person was laying on his deathbed and he said, whatever this tree is going to produce in the coming year belongs to the poor, they are zeiche. They do get it, not from the din of kinyan, but from the din of matana, of a shchiv mira. Because he said ilan zeh. Yes, geinim shechelkin, not because he said ilan zeh, but because he said la'aniyim. I'm sorry. Because it was for the poor, and for the poor doesn't have the same din of ein the makar davar shleib leilam. Yes, gain it's a chelek and the aim and anim zecher lebedon shahad yekene behem. There are certain goinim that argue and say that the aniyim could only receive that which a regular person would have received in a kinyan. But I don't agree with them. Because when it comes to kinyan, there's no commandment. So therefore, we say, but when it comes to tzedakah, there is a mitzvah to fulfill. Just like a person has a mitzvah to fulfill his neder, he has a mitzvah to fulfill his pledge to tzedakah, he has a mitzvah to fulfill his pledge to hektish, and therefore, because of that mitzvah, that makes that the aniyim, the poor, should be zoicha, should be able to receive what the shchiv meirah offered. So in the brackets, we're just reinforcing this din of the Rambam that when it comes to hektish or tzedakah, even though it's a davar shalei bala elam, there's still an obligation on the person to fulfill his neder, and because of that, if he was a shchiv mirah, the aniyim, the poor, will get it. Ad kan, until this point in the sikha, is the nigla, is the halacha part. It's been discussed many times that every halacha, in addition to its basic details, also has a lesson in our spiritual avodah to Hashem. The Rambam says that it is advice in the refinement of our character. As Rambam says, that most of the dinim of Torah are actually advice to improve our character and to make our deeds, our actions upright. And so too, in this topic of kinyanim, there's two dinim that we focused on. Aleph, the difference between selling the fruit or the tree for its fruit, which we said that you can't sell the fruit themselves that were not yet produced, but you could sell the tree for its fruit. The Rambam's difference between a regular person making a transaction, which is no mitzvah involved, versus the din of hektish, pledging something to hektish or to the poor, where there is a mitzvah for him to fulfill his words, and therefore he's obligated to fulfill his words, even if he was speaking about something that doesn't yet exist. So there's two sets of things over here. Number one, Pedis versus Dekel Leperesav, or Guf Leperesav, and Kinyan of Hedyet versus pledge to Hektish or to Aniyim. So we will find these ideas as they can be translated into the individual person's avodah as he serves Hashem. Okay, so number one, Siv Beis, we're going to first establish what's a Kinyan. And then once we know what a kinyan is, then we're going to establish what is a kinyan pedis, where you're acquiring the fruit, versus kinyan guf. And then we're going to apply the halacha. The whole idea of serving Hashem is, in a sense, making a kinyan, making a transaction. The Yid is makna zich v'chol hashleitzim. To serve Hashem means a Yid is giving away to Hashem himself and everything that he owns. It should be recognized, it should be obvious that he and everything he owns are in the possession of Hashem. By assuring that his speech, thought, and action are always consistent with the will of Hashem. That's the idea of kinyan. What's my purpose of serving Hashem? To be makna, to make a transaction in which I give to Hashem my conduct, my thought, speech, and action, that Hashem is my owner. And this actually explains why Chazal use the word koini. When we say, Chazal tell us I was created to serve my creator, my master, he doesn't say the word he doesn't say the word my creator, he says the word koini. Because through serving Hashem, through lishamesh, it becomes revealed that the Eibishter is koini, not just the person who created, not just the one who created me, but the one who owns me. Koini from the term kinyan. And this concept that the Yid is the possession of Hashem will be revealed when Mashiach comes. Ka'amar by the Yehudi HaGeula, as it is said in the promises of Geula, by Yemahu, Yesif Adnai Liknes Sha'ar Amei, Hashem is going to continue to acquire the rest of his nation. As we see, when the Yidden of Mitzrayim, Amzu Kanisa, this nation that you acquired. So here there's three examples, two psukim and one Maimer Chazal, where the Eibishter is referred to as the one who acquires or who owns the Yid. So we see from this that what's the idea of serving Hashem? To allow Hashem to own us. Okay. Obviously Hashem created us, so He owns us. But the idea here is that we should be makna, that we on our own, rather than being independent from Hashem and thinking that we are in charge of our own destiny and our own choices, to acknowledge and to recognize that the Eibishter is our owner, and that's done through refining our character in machshava, in dibur, and in ma'aseh, thought, speech, and action. Now, within them kinyan, within this concept of ownership, which a yid gives it to Hashem, gives himself to Hashem to be owned. So there are two approaches, two levels. Hashem could own my fruit, or Hashem could own my body. And again, body here doesn't mean the physical body; it means the essence of the person, as we will see. The chiluk zwischen guf and peiros b'adam is, what's the difference between the guf, the body, and the fruit? Guf is the nefesh v'guf shalei v'akeches shalem. Guf means the actual person, the body, the soul, and the strengths of the soul. Including the intellect that's in the mind, emotions in the heart, and all of the other strengths, including the strength that gives the person the ability to speak. In other words, it's not the actual thought, speech, and action, which we'll get to in a moment, but the fact that I have the ability to speak, the fact that I have the ability to think, the fact that I have the ability to do is called a koyach hamachshava, or a koyach hamaisa, and koyach, the strengths, the ability that I have to do things, is part of guf. So guf means the source of what I produce in this world. Peiros fruits refer to the actions of the person's limbs or the garments of the soul, which are machshava dibur ma'aseh. As the Chazal tell us that a tzaddik's fruit are his good deeds. These good deeds, or these deeds, they grow, they are produced by the guf, the koiches, the seichel, the midos. So just like in a tree, you have the tree and you have the fruit. In the person, the produce of the person are his thought, speech, and action. And they are born from the guf of the person, which are the koiches adam, the strengths of the person, such as seichel and midos, intellect and emotion, which produce the thought, speech, and action. So kinyan is giving ourselves away to Hashem. Kinyan, then we have within us, we have guf, which is the source of the things that we produce, versus peiros, which are the things that we produce, not necessarily things we create, but the things that we do within ourselves via thought, speech, and action. And now we could try to understand what is kinyan ha-peiros. Once we know what the peiros are, once we know what the guf is, now we can try to understand what does it mean kinyan ha-peiros. Hashem is acquiring the guf of the person, or Hashem is acquiring the peiros. Kinyan peiros meint, as Eid is makne zum Eibishten alle seine machshavos, diburim umaisim, v'zeh seine peiros von ha-nefesh v'kechesel v'chushel. Kinyan peiros means that a person gives away all of his thoughts, speech, and action to Hashem. It is vollständig abgehit in dem allem. He is totally and completely careful in all of his thought, speech, and action. As a mechshava, dibur ma'aseh soll allemol sein b'hesem tzvaratzon Hashem. That it should always and constantly be consistent with Hashem's will. In other words, you have a person that struggles to the point that sometimes he doesn't do everything that he should. That person, there's no kinyan. Person that does a mitzvah, a good deed, that's not called kinyan, because he also owns himself. He does things that he likes that are not be'esim Ratzon Hashem, chas v'shalom. But a person that all his machshavas, diburim, u'maisim are la Hashem, are for Hashem, are consistent with Ratzon Hashem, that is called a kinyan. Hashem owns that person, at least his peiros. As the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya with regards to a Benini, the Benini is someone that never sinned, never will sin, and that never has upon him the name of Rasha. Which means, if the machshava, if one machshava is off, or one dibur, or one maisa, in that moment is called a Rasha. So then, this is not a person that we could say that Hashem owns his fruit, because there's not all of his fruit are owned by Hashem. Some of them are owned by himself. But a person that has given away all of his machshavas, diburim, and maisim, that is a level of ownership, but it's only ownership of the fruit, not of the essence of the person. But his goof, which means to say the intellect, the emotions, or the faculties of feelings that he has, that has not been owned by Hashem. His thought, his mind, and his heart are not free from the possibility of inappropriate thoughts, of inappropriate midos or temptations, urges, etc. Which begin in the heart and then rise up to the mind. So he has urges and he has temptations and he has ideas in his head that may not be appropriate, but he has enough control to not allow that they should be implemented in actuality. That it should be played out in thought, speech, and action. So this is the person of Kinyan Peiros, that he gave his Peiros to Hashem, which means when it comes to Machshava Dibur Maisa, they are perfect. They are owned by Hashem, but his goof, not necessarily. What's going on inside of his head, what's going on inside of his heart, is not very beautiful. But he's enough in control that whatever is going on inside of him has not affected the thought, speech, and action, and therefore his peiros are called owned by Hashem. Kinyan Hagufis, the Aveda von Atzadik versus Makna zum Eibishten Echtem Etzem Seichel U'Midas. Kinyan Haguf means that he gave away also the essence of his Seichel U'Midas, of his mind and of his heart. He subdues his Yetzirah, and he subdues the seichel, any negative seichel or negative midas, etc. He only desires holy and good things. So this is a totally different level. The first person, the Kinyan Peiros, he desires other things, but he doesn't do them. Here, he doesn't even have a desire, he doesn't even have temptation to these other things. And this kind of person, because he already gave away not just his fruit, he gave away the source of the fruit, which is his seichel and his midas and his kaiches. His thought, speech, and action, which are his fruit, are automatically owned by Hashem. He doesn't have to fight with himself to not do something or think something or say something that's against the will of Hashem, because he doesn't even have a desire to it in his heart. So certainly it doesn't actually play out that a person should think or speak or do something. This person should do something wrong. So Kinyan HaPeiros means Hashem owns the Peiros. The person gave away his thought, speech, and action, that they should all be perfect and dedicated to Hashem. Everything that he does is consistent with Ratzon Hashem. The Kinyan HaGuf is at an even higher level, like a tzaddik, as we'll see in a moment. That he gave away even his seichel midas. Even his keiches he gave away to Hashem. He doesn't even desire things he's not allowed to desire, he's not allowed to do, etc., etc. And automatically, obviously, his machshava d'ibur ma'aseh is going to be as it should be, because the source of it is as it should be. So the fruit will be as they should be. So in a sense, Kinyan HaPeiros is a beinoni, which means that he's still struggling, but in actuality, he has given away his machshava d'ibur ma'aseh to the Eibishter, and Kinyan HaGuf is the tzaddik. This is one of the explanations why a tzaddik is called an Eved Hashem, someone who is a servant of Hashem. Because servitude is a form of giving away one's guf. Guf is kanu l'Rabbi. The halacha is that the master owns the very servant, the whole person. And because of that, automatically, whatever the servant owns, takes ownership of, the master takes ownership of it. Similarly, a tzaddik gave away his entire being to Hashem, and therefore everything that he does is for Hashem. So we've established that kinyan means that Hashem owns us. There's two forms of Hashem owning us. Either he owns our actions, which is called kinyan peiris. He owns our fruit. Or he owns us, our entire being, that every part of us is consistent with Ratzon Hashem, which that's the level of a tzaddik. Sif Gimel, we're now going to explain, according to this, what does it mean that a person cannot give away to Hashem that which does not yet exist. Now we'll understand what it means that a person cannot give away something that doesn't exist. In the mashal, in the halacha, it meant fruit of a tree that didn't yet begin to grow, that I can't give it to someone else in the form of a kinyan because it doesn't exist. How would this apply in the peiris that we're talking about over here, which are the person's actions? So says the Rebbe as follows: person that's not on the level of tzaddik, it's not on the level that he's able or ready to give away his entire being to Hashem. Nor blazed by kinyan peiris, he's giving away his fruit, his actions to Hashem. Ken nor makna zayin the machshavas diburim ha'is baruch. He's only giving away his thought, speech, and action, but not the source of it, which is the seichel hamidus. Darvisni must know. This person, the person that's on this level, must know. As er is bekeach zu shelen zayin durch milchama blaze efti meisim diburim chulu mit welcher vernemt sich itz bepeil. He is truly can only take ownership or control of that which is happening in the now. And it's abernitkin balabayis who can eat maknas and adav shalei b'leilam. At this point in time, he does not have enough ownership to give away something that doesn't yet exist. Meaning, b'shasar macht it ta'achlota as be'asar v'tatana ma'aser tov. If a person makes right now a resolution, a decision that he's going to do a good deed, it's a decision that he made and he's going to try to keep it and everything like that, but it's not considered a kinyan. It's not something that's already owned by Hashem. There's no guarantee, there's no assuredness that this deed that he's planning to do will in the future will certainly be done according to the will of Hashem. Just like in the halacha, the person who sold the fruit can take the fruit back because at the time of the transaction they didn't exist. The person who made the hachlata can still change his mind. Warum? Since the person's guf is not owned by Hashem, which means the essence of the Ra still exists in full force, and it hasn't been gotten rid of. So every single time he has to once again struggle or battle with the Yetzer Hara. To not allow the urge or the desire of the Yetzer to be implemented in actuality. It's possible when it comes to the actual fight, but the Yetzer will overpower him. Not allow the good resolution to be carried out. So therefore, the Chazal are telling us in the sense that a person makes a achlata, it's possible that he's not going to be able to do it every single time, as he wants to. Almost as if to say that it's a natural thing that when a person makes a achlata, then not always will he be able to keep it all the way, because every single time he has to fulfill this achlata, he actually has to fight. He actually has to win a war with the Yetzer Hara. And since there's no way at this point for this person to guarantee what his actions will look like in the time to come, because there's still an inner struggle going on inside of him, because he has not makna the guf, he hasn't given away the guf, the source of his fruit to Hashem. So therefore, at any given time, the Yetzer could overpower him, and there'll be a different outcome than that which he hoped for or planned for. So in that case, what's the Yetzer? How does a person when they want to make a achlata tova, they want to make a good resolution, but they want to be able to be have some assurance that this is real, and he'll be able to actually fulfill it and overcome the challenges that may come his way. So for this we're going to go to mimakna haguf lepereisav. Like we said in the halacha, that you cannot sell the fruit, but you could sell the tree for the fruit. And now the Rabbi is going to explain how that works. B'vedus Hashem. Afal pikein is eich der basot nachnet dem keach zu uftan dem inyan von kinyan haguf. Even someone that does not have the ability, the strength to be able to give their entire being to Hashem, to remake, to transform his midas in his heart and the desires that come from his mind, that they should be totally owned by Hashem. There is a piece of advice how he could give away the fruit, that even though they don't exist yet. And he does that by giving away the guf lipereisav. For example, giving away the tree for the fruit. Even though he's not giving away the actual guf of the person, the actual source of the person's fruit to Hashem. But he could give away some of the guf, enough that they will affect the fruit. The Asbara in them, and the Rebbe will explain. So in other words, the Rebbe is now going to present to us a scenario where the person is still struggling inside, but he has enough control on the inside that he could know that his machshava dibur ma'aseh will be as it should be. So even though he's not a tzaddik, and there's still a deep struggle on the inside, but nevertheless, some level of control he's going to gain, and that will affect his machshava dibur ma'aseh. So the Alter Rebbe explains, the Aveda von Abeinani is nit bagrenetz blois zu sein levusha nefesh. The Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya that despite the fact that what defines the Beinani in a certain sense is what happens in application, in actuality, the fact that he's in control of the Yetzer Hara, that it shouldn't affect his machshava dibur ma'aseh, that's what makes a Beinani. But nevertheless, that's not all of it. As jeder Moven beliebe wird neseder atayve veratzen is blaze lechen zum weiten die spashtos atayve veratzen machshava der meister, that every time he feels an urge in his or a temptation, that he struggles to control the spread of that taiva, that it should reach implementation. That's not the entirety of the Beinani. That every time he has a taiva, he wants to eat something that's not supposed to eat, he says, no, I'm not going to eat it, and that's it. Nor the Aveda is eich peil. Nor the Aveda is eich peil af the midas v'seichel atzman. The Aveda of the Beinani also affects the seichel and the midas. As there is kaifa v'atsha oiser reishim al kalponim gam b'negel la'asid dem ra shebeliba yomechi. He's kaifa, which means he controls, he coerces the ra enough that it can actually affect it for the future as well. Usually kaifa, which means to force, it is temporary. The Rebbe adds in the parentheses, we're talking about the Beinani is on a level that when he forces or takes control of the Ra, it's enough that it leaves an impact on the future as well. The Alter Rebbe is Behar. The Alter Rebbe explains, as b'shas atfila is a Beinani me'eir bazich avos Hashem b'sgalos libei. During davening, it's an eis ratzon. Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, it is a special time, and the Beinani could awaken within himself a revealed love to Hashem. That right now, what is taking what's most important is the fact that he loves Hashem, which causes to sedate the Ra that's in the person. And this love leaves an effect on the person. And this gives the person the ability to overcome and to control the Ra that has temptation or urges. And the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that since during davening it's with an emes, even though it's not the full emes, but sfas emes tikin la'ad, but even the sfas means the edge, even something that is on the border of truth, but it's truth, tikin la'ad, it's eternal. And he has the ability to awaken within him this love to Hashem. And because of that, to sedate the evil, the negative that's in his heart, he can do so every single day. Which means that the Beinani has some control over his Yetzer Hara, has some control over not just whether it's going to happen in actuality, but also on the feelings, on the urges, on the temptations of the Yetzer Hara. Before we conclude, in other words, the Rebbe didn't yet conclude the idea, but at this point, the Rebbe wants to say, because of this, the wording in Tanya are much easier to understand. When das geht a taste his beer, this adds an additional explanation. In the Demas Alter Rebbe sagt wegen Abeinani as the Aved Abeinim Yom V'Liyav Leilam, with regards what Alter Rebbe says that Abeinani not only has he never committed a sin, but he never will commit a sin. The says mitzad matzavi b'hoiva, in the current state that he is in, is there batuach as Liyav Leilam, he's guaranteed, or he's assured rather that he won't commit an aveda. As eich ba'asad v'tazikha kenen shelos an aviyatzara the tanken aveda, that even in the future he'll be able to control his Yetzer Hara. Va'il abeinani atashlit eichav temidas on the Yetzer Hara, because the Beinani has control not only on the machshava dibur ma'isa, even on the midis of the Yetzer Hara, nor nit of the etzal midis shel nor blaze b'yachas zedis patzos peidis machshava dibur ma'isa. He doesn't have control on the midah itself, just on the midah as it affects machshava dibur ma'isa, which means that a midah, a person feels something, a desire to something, a love, a hate, whatever it might be. Then that midah then has to be applied to the fact that now he wants to do it machshava dibur ma'isa. In other words, there's a step where the midah be'etzem, that he likes good things or he hates bad things, etc., etc. And then there is the midah, as the midah now talks to machshava dibur ma'isa and says, let's get this done. So a person of kinyan aguf, person who his entire being is owned by Hashem, even the midah itself is purified. A person that's not on that level, but if he's a Beinani that's working on himself, doing his aveda to transform his Yetzer Hara, he has enough control on the midas, on the part of the midah that affects machshava dibur ma'isa, and therefore liyaver lo'elam. In other words, I mean, b'chlal, it's explained in Tanya. It's explained on Tanya that a Beinani is liyaver lo'elam because wherever he is right now, he's in a state of mind, of heart, that he's never going to do an avera. But here it's a taste of his beer, because now it makes more sense to us. Why? Because since the Beinani is working on himself, not just on his machshava dibur ma'isa, but also on his midas, and the midas, the way they affect machshava dibur ma'isa. Therefore, if he's in this, if in the point that he is right now, that he has that level of control, therefore you can be assured of liyaver lo'elam, or somewhat assured of liyaver lo'elam. So now let's go back to the idea of makna guf lepereisav. And thus is the inyan from makna guf adam lepereisav, guf lepereisav. Even if the person is not on a level that he could totally transform the midas that are in his heart, that he shouldn't have any desires that are not appropriate. So, but he still has the ability to force, to control, to coerce his midas, at least with regards to their impact on the fruit. And then even the thought, speech, and action that does not yet exist in this world, it's owned by Hashem, and he's in a matzah from the Yavar Leilam, he's in a state of never, that right as of now, he's not going to do any Avedas. So this is the the two forms of it. You have a kinyan peiris, where the person is giving away machshava dibur ma'isa to Hashem, but not anything more than that. If that's the case, though he might be on the level of Beinani, because machshava dibur ma'isa is perfect, but he still can't know what's going to be tomorrow, because since the midos of the nefesh abamis of the Yetzer Hara are in full force, tomorrow they might be stronger than they are today, or he might be weaker. The situation, the environment might change. You could be surrounded by good people. You could be in a positive space, and therefore the environment is healthy. Tomorrow you might be in a more precarious environment, and you may not be strong enough. You don't know what's going on. So that's why the person that just wants to give machshava d'maisa to Hashem, though we're calling it kinyan, because he gave everything to Hashem, machshava dibur ma'isa, but we can't know what it'll be tomorrow. In this moment, Hashem owns this person because his machshava dibur ma'isa is as it should be. But it doesn't mean that he's owned for tomorrow. But then, if a person, the same person, meaning to say, we're still not talking about the tzaddik who gave away his entire being to Hashem, the same person that has taivas and so on and so forth. But if he began to work on his midos, to refine his midos, that they should not send these messages of taivas and urges, etc., to the machshava dibur ma'isa, then machshava dibur ma'isa are much safer, because the person is working on the source, and therefore, even though he hasn't yet taken full control of the source to say that Hashem owns the guf, but he's taken enough control that the paydas are guaranteed even to the future, and therefore you could say that you could be makna even the fruits that don't yet exist. In Under the Vertermetas, in Sifrei the Rebbe is going to present this concept with a different perspective, or a different approach. Even though not every person could reach the level that they could be a servant of Hashem, which means their entire being belongs to Hashem. He's over yederi da shliach von Eibishter. Every is a shliach of Hashem. Was die keches durchzufinden kavanat sabriya las lesbarach the which has the ability to fulfill the ultimate purpose of creation, which is to make a dwelling place for Hashem in this world. Shluchei shel adam ha'elin kimeisei u'kimeisei dem shliach mamish. Because since the shliach of the Eibishter, since shluchei adam kimeisei, which is the halacha that a shliach of a person is like the person themselves, then certainly a shliach of Hashem is like Hashem. In other words, we're going to explain that a tzaddik is called an Eved Hashem, but the non-tzaddik is called the Shliach of Hashem. We get that come upon him as the hechster eifon in shlichus is as nit nur ma'isa shliach, or that afilu der kayach ha'asiyah shalei. Izich midachas shumashaleach. In other places it's discussed there are three levels in shlichus. Number one is that the action that the shliach takes is associated to the mishaleach. So therefore, if he brings a get to a woman for his sender, so she is considered a divorce because the action that he took was associated to the mishaleach. Another level is that kayach ha'asiyah shalei, not just the actual action that he took, but the ability to take an action is associated to the mishaleach. Nor klolus, there's a third level. Klolus mitzayusei shel hashliach is kemoisei the mishleach mamish. The entire being of the shliach is associated to the mishaleach, and automatically because of that, whatever the shliach does is credited to the mishaleach, because his entire being is the being of the mishaleach. So therefore, even though he wasn't makna the guf, he's not an Eved Hashem, but he could still be makna haguf lepereisav, means he could still be a shliach of Hashem, that everything that he does is for Hashem. And Afal Pikein does nit b'deimet Eved, but says nit kimetzias b'fnei atzmei klal. Kol gufa is koni l'Rabbi. If the whole shliach is the metzias of the mishaleach, then what's the difference between Eved? The difference is that an Eved, there isn't a metzias. The person who's the Eved is not a Metzias at all. He's not an entity, because everything was given away, is owned by the master. Saying about shliach, afilu in the hechs neifel for shlichus, but the shliach atzmei nitna zay meister kechasiyas kwis dem shliach mamish. In the highest level of shlichus, where it's not just the things he does, or his power of action belongs to the Mishaleach, but his very being belongs to the Mishaleach, is nor b'shaychas to the shlichus. It's only with regards to the shlichus. when the Mishleach says to the Shliach, do this, then the entire Shliach becomes like the Mishleach with regards to this specific Shlichus. Just like when you're giving the tree for its fruit. But with regards to the other aspects of the Shliach, or of the Mishaleach, the Shliach is not connected. Whereas by an Eved, every aspect of the Eved is owned by the master. Every Yid has the ability to give his general existence to Hashem. To be a Shliach of Hashem, to fulfill the purpose of creation. And if there's a general, the general aspect of the person is given to Hashem, even though the guf, the entire being is not given. Not all of the details are being given to Hashem, but the general person is dedicating himself to Hashem. Then this obviously affects the machshava dibur ma'isa. That's another way of looking at this idea of guf lepereisav. That the person is not just giving away his actions, he's giving away his general being. Not all the details of his being, but his general being, like a shliach versus an eved, which an eved gives his entire being to Hashem. So you have in Sifhei another way of breaking it down, that it's you talk that the kinyan aguf, kinyan aguf is an eved. Kinyan Pedis would mean someone that does a shliach that does what he has to do, and Kinyan Aguf Liperesav is the shliach that, despite the fact that he retains his own mitzias with regards to other parts of his life, but with regards to his shlichus, he is kemoisei da mashaleach, and therefore all of his machshavas deburim ma'asim are associated to the mashaleach. So up until this point, we focused on the first of the two details, the difference between Kinyan Pedis and Kinyan Haguf Liperesav. That when the person gave his machshavas dibur ma'asim to Hashem, there's no guarantee what tomorrow will bring. But if a person begins to work on his midas as well, as they affect his machshava dibur ma'isa, then there is a good chance that we could be assured about what tomorrow will bring, because since the machshavas dibur ma'isa are being produced by his midas, and his midas, he has taken some control over that. Therefore, the guf lepereisav does work. In Sivav and on, we're going to go to the second detail that we brought in the beginning of the Sikha, that despite the fact that you cannot be makna, you cannot give away, you cannot transact Pedis, nevertheless, when it's to hektish or to aniyim, to the poor, there still is an obligation upon the person to fulfill his word. In them is the Rambam Machalish Nochmer. The Rambam has a greater chiddush. He introduces something, an idea that's even more novel. That the din of hektish, donating something to hektish, is not like a regular transaction. The person says, whatever any births that my behemoth gives in this coming year will belong to hektish. He's obligated to fulfill his word. So we can explain this in Aveda Ruchnis. If a person is not on the level that he's ready to work on his midos, to refine his midos, so that way he could be makna haguf lipereisav, that his midos will affect his fruit, his machshav dermaisa. He has zero control over the guf, over the midas. Even not on a level that enough to affect his peiros. And he's on a level that he cannot give to Hashem those fruits that don't yet exist. And therefore, every time he has to do something, he has to fight another battle to be able to assure that what he does should be consistent with the will of Hashem. When is this case? When you're talking about if it was a mundane transaction, which there's no mitzvah involved. There's no mitzvah to sell a field or to sell fruit. To say like in Divrei Reshus Adam, we're talking about things in the person's realm that are not mandatory, and therefore we say that if Hashem doesn't own it, then you don't know what's going to be. When you're talking about matters of the holy realm, good resolutions in the area of Teiro mitzvahs, the kind of things that he is obligated to do, is it's true that you can't make a kinyan, you can't change something in the actual item that is outside of the person, that is external to the person. But what could happen here is that you've created an obligation on the person, the chefza, the piece of fruit or whatever it is upon which you're making a achlata, that doesn't get changed, that doesn't get affected yet, because this person is not on that level. But nevertheless, within the person, there is now an obligation to fulfill what he said. We know that whenever Hashem commands us something, He also gives us the ability, the strength we need to fulfill it. So once that resolution that the person made became a chiyuv, an obligation on the person, because it was in Yanim, it was in the realm of kedusha, which there is a mitzvah to do, then there is an obligation upon the person, and because of that, there is also assistance from above. When the Asbari in them, and Rabbi explains this very beautifully. Those parts of the person, mundane parts of the person, the non-mandatory parts of being a yid, are primarily in the realm of his nature, his nefesh habamis, his animal soul. That desires it because that's what it needs for its sustenance, for its existence. Nor the nefesh alikis can peil zayin as the ma'asim on getam ve'al shem shemayim. The nefesh alikis could come in and arrange that these things that the nefesh habamis wants to do for its existence, it should be done l'shem shemayim. It should be done for the sake of heaven. But they still remain your deeds, mundane actions. So a person decides to do something, decides that he wants to make some money in order to give tzedakah. Or I guess as soon as you say tzedakah, it doesn't really work. But a person that wants to make some money, obviously ba'ofen hamuter. So the nefesh, it's really the realm of the nefesh habamis. The nefesh or the kiss could come in and say, do what you have to do, but let's have a better kavana. Let's do it l'shem shamayim. But the actual thing that's taking place is in the realm of the nefesh habamis, of the guf. Whereas things that are being done in the realm of Teiro mitzvahs, that is the realm of the neshama. The Yitzhara proof nor stern the mitzvah kinds of the mitzvah. The Yitzhara wants to distract or disturb the person from doing the mitzvah. Und the asiyas mitzvah kum durch dem, was the neshama is kefer dem Yitzer. So, and then what happens? What happens is that the neshama now fights the Yitzer, and he says, "This is my business. Teiro mitzvah, this is my business. You stay out of this." And he fights him to the point, he weakens him. He knocks him down. So that way the neshama should do what it needs to do, which is the mitzvah. So in other words, mundane pursuits are the realm of the nefesh habamis, and the nefesh of the kids gets involved to make it l'shem shamayim. Teiro mitzvahs is the realm of the nefesh of the kids, and the nefesh habamis comes in to try and distract him or disturb him, and the nefesh of the kids has to overcome it. And that's why there's a difference between mundane matters and holy matters. When a yid makes a positive resolution with regard to mundane matters, since these things that he's doing are still in the realm of the guf, of the nefesh habamis. We're talking about a person that doesn't yet have full control over his yitzhara. There's no obligation that happened here. It's not in the ownership of the neshama of the nefesh, because of the nefesh alikis, because it's the realm of the nefesh habamis, and there was no kinyan made. Whereas in matters of Torah mitzvahs, which are primarily in the realm of the neshama, but we still have to get rid of the distraction that the Yetzer Hara gets involved. But who owns it? Whose domain is it? Of the neshama is the achlata teva guf neshama. The very resolution to do this shein mechayiv mishabed the neshama durch tzvir the achlata. It already obligates the neshama to carry out this resolution. You can say that there was a transaction here, but the Yetzer Hara can in them stellen. Though it's in the realm of the Nefesh Elikis, the Nefesh Abamis is involved still, trying to distract him and disturb him. So you can't say it's totally owned by the Neshama, to the point that the Nefesh Abamis has no impact here. So therefore, it's not calling it a kinyan. It's not a hakna. It's not a transaction. Oh, but the gabi aneshama vibalda zi is muchan betiva durchsvim the yanim bepeil. Hayes is zayin ida polisis b'shusu b'balusa. But from the perspective of the neshama, since the neshama is ready by nature, by the nature of the neshama, to do what it has to do, is chal afir achiyu v'shiva l'kaim dvarav. There is an actual obligation upon this neshama to fulfill its words. Chotz is adayin le'balelim chutz imena, even though it's not yet it's still external to the neshama. It doesn't exist yet. Nevertheless, since this achlata, person makes achlata that he's going to learn Torah. Since learning Torah is a mitzvah, so as soon as this achlata is made, it becomes since it's already in the realm of the neshama, it becomes a chiyuv, becomes an obligation. When it's a divrei rishus, you can't make an obligation out of it because it's not a mitzvah. So you can't make an obligation out of it, and therefore it's just